This is Deacon Joe Pusateri from St. Walter in Roselle. And this is the third in our series of 6 sessions on Pope Francis's newest encyclical letter, Fratelli Tutti. In this session, we'll be discussing chapters 3 and 4 of the encyclical, entitled An Open Heart and an Open World. Chapter 3 presents the Pope's teaching about love, which is essential to his approach to fraternity and social friendship. The spiritual stature of a person's life is measured by love, he says. Human beings find their fulfillment in the sincere gift of self to others. This love must grow beyond family and nation to include strangers and all people into a friendship where the worth of every person is acknowledged. He says, love both draws us out of ourselves and draws the ones we love into ourselves. I love that image of communion. True love also impels us toward universal communion, meaning everyone will be drawn into that circle of love. Because by its very nature, love calls for growth in openness and the ability to accept others. This movement toward solidarity doesn't eliminate differences, but celebrates the beauty of diversity. Fraternity grows into a universal love that promotes others when human connections are consciously cultivated in order to defeat the virus of radical individualism, as he puts it. One person's love for others, for who they are, moves them to seek the best for them. Only by cultivating this way of relating to one another is it possible to create a social friendship that excludes no one and a fraternity that's open to all. Seeking and pursuing the good of others and of the entire human family also implies helping individuals and societies to mature in the moral values that foster positive human development and growth. Every society needs to ensure that values are passed on, otherwise what's handed down are selfishness, violence, corruption, indifference, and ultimately a life closed to transcendence and stuck in individual interests. Based on a universal love and realizing the inherent dignity of every person, we have an obligation to ensure that every person has sufficient opportunities to grow and develop in a healthy way. Pope Francis says that this requires a re-envisioning of the social role of property to ensure each person has what's necessary to live with dignity. The right to private property, Pope Francis says, can only be considered secondary to the idea that God's gift of creation belongs to everyone. This means that when someone's in need, it shouldn't matter where a person comes from. Those resources belong to him or her as much as to those who live there. This is a very difficult thing for many people to accept, and he recognizes that this way of thinking is not common. But if we accept the great principle that there are rights born of an inalienable human dignity, we can rise to the challenge of envisaging a new humanity. In chapter 4, Pope Francis explores the moral and social implications of having a heart open to the whole world. What does this mean in practice? He first considers immigration, explaining that until the various conditions which force people to migrate are collectively addressed, nations should have a fundamental openness to welcoming, protecting, promoting, and integrating their neighbor, the migrant or refugee. Immigrants bringing new cultures into society should be regarded as a gift, and cultural differences shouldn't be erased, but celebrated. Pope Francis describes how, especially in the era of globalization, mutual assistance between countries proves enriching for each. This is true in terms of cultural exchange and the cooperation that's needed to address poverty in parts of the world. The true worth of the different countries of our world is measured by their ability to think not simply as a country, but also as part of a larger human family. He calls for a fraternal gratuitousness that's not based merely on commercial exchange, but on true concern for the well-being of those in other countries. By gratuitousness, Pope Francis means acting because it's right to do so, without concern for our personal gain or recompense, such as welcoming strangers, even though this brings us no immediate gain. Francis acknowledges the innate tension between localization and globalization, but says that each has its place. We need to pay attention to the global so as to avoid narrowness, yet we also need to look to the local, which keeps our feet on the ground. He says universal fraternity and local social friendship are thus two inseparable and equally vital poles in every society. There's a way of living rooted in one's own culture while striving for the common good of the whole of humanity. Each particular group becomes part of the fabric of universal communion, and there discovers its own beauty. All individuals, whatever their origin, know that they're part of the greater human family, without which they will not be able to understand themselves fully. In this way, the Pope moves from an individual fraternity to a fraternity that's global, across nations